So switch statements. Today we'll talk about switch statements. So suppose you have a function that is a simple calculator. You're given an operand and you give a operand or operand, I don't know, and you have number A and number B. And depending, we'll have a simple calculator that only does plus, minus, multiply, or divide. And depending on that, you change the result. So far, this is all things we already know. We have an if statement, and it goes into else if. And depending on the operand, it changes on the operation, and then you change the result and return the result. So this is all fine and dandy, but the downside is that if we have a lot of different types of operands we can have, then this if-else statement will get very long. And the other downside is that the longer if-else statement is, the longer it takes to reach the last one, because it has to go through every single one. It says, okay, is the first if statement true? No, let's move to the next else if statement. Is that true? No, and etc. So if in our case, if the operand is divide, it has to evaluate all these other cases before it can get to the case where we divide it, and that's not very efficient. So we have a thing called a switch. So a switch statement kind of looks like this. You start with switch, and within these two parentheses, you put in the variable that you're evaluating. And down here, you can have a bunch of different cases that are values that matches. And when it matches, the block of code within the case will be ran. So now, one thing that's very important is this break statement here. You need to have a break statement if you don't want subsequent blocks to run. What that means is that, so for example, if we go here, so this is the example if we take our previous calculator and rewrite it with switch statement. So we're evaluating the operand, and if it's plus, we do result equals number A plus number B, and then we break. Break meaning we skip out of the rest of the switch statement and we move down here. Okay, so let's look at this exact code, and if we run that, let's be clear. We run this, we get 3, because down here I'm doing an add 1 and 2, and of course I can change this to whatever number I want. Give me 7. If I do a minus, in here it will match this case, which will set the result to num A minus num B, which in our case is going to be 3 again. So what happens if I don't have these breaks? What happens is once it matches, it will run the rest of these code. It will in fact run the rest of these. Actually, I didn't even explain default. Default just means if none of the cases matches, it will run the code in the default block instead. So if you don't have the break statement, what happens is that it will run every single case. So it's a little bit hard to tell, but in here, it added it and set it to result, and it subtracted it and then reset it into result. And that's why the result you see is actually 5 divided by 2, because that's the last case where we write the result. If we do a console log here, added, oops, what we do here, subbed, this is multi, and divide. If we add a console log, you will see every single cases sort of happened. So, and that is not what we want. Like, you see how the first one was skipped because we are doing subtract, but if we do add, then it will run every single case. So make sure you have a break statement if this is not the behavior you want. In most cases, people will use break because the fact that you're matching a statement means like your code is exclusive. So if we add back the plus, now it's only doing the add, and which is what we wanted. If we change it to multiply, it will only do the multiply and nothing else. Okay, cool. So that's a switch statement. There's also an additional case if you have some alias. For example, in this case, if we want to do something if the variable equals A, or if the variable equals B, you can do something like this, which kind of utilizes the break, right? It means if you match A, it doesn't have anything else to do, but it will continue running because you don't have a break after A. So it will run whatever's in this block. Same with B. If you match B, it's just a normal case. Okay, so there are a couple of limitations. First one, when you match these cases, it has to be equals. You can't do a case where say like, okay, if operand is bigger than something, you do something like this. You can't really do that with a switch statement because it evaluates using equals. So when you provide a value, it have to be a value. You can't evaluate with bigger sign, smaller sign, or some other boolean. It is faster than chain else ifs. The reason is that in switch, when it's built, it will try to go to that block of code directly. It doesn't go down the list of like saying each and individual one, does it match? It kind of just does a The exact detail of how it works is a little bit more complicated, but just know that if you have a lot of if-else statements that just evaluate one variable and to see if it equals to some other constant you already know about, it's much faster to use a switch statement. And it's good for parallel logic because it's faster, so you don't have to go down the list of if and else ifs, blah blah blah. Okay, cool. So homework. This one's a little bit more complicated. So let's write a function to determine if a given letter is a vowel. So your function will look like this. Function is vowel, and you'll be given a letter. And within here, you're try to use a switch statement to determine if the given letter is a vowel. Since I don't want you to go through all 26 letters, let's just assume we'll only be given A, B, C, D, and E. And within that, if you're given A and E, your function should return true because it is a vowel. If you're given B, C, D, it should return false because it's not a vowel. If you're given something that's neither the case, then you should throw a log message. Another good practice for this is also remember that there's uppercase and lowercase, so you can utilize the alias cases to include those in the same statements. That is it from me. Thank you guys. See you guys next time.